spoke to Ollie the other day, and I got a really kind of interesting perspective from you, actually, because I think we've known each other a few years, and Ollie knew me when I was part of a larger organisation, part of a kind of a corporate C-suite role, and I hadn't necessarily reflected on my move 18 months ago to a small partnership in a different field, and what that kind of took from me to do, particularly in mindset, particularly in opening what actually transpired to be quite a fixed mindset. It's probably the most difficult transition, despite my kind of corporate success that I've made, actually. So I kind of wanted to reflect on that in light of the fact that that might resonate with some of you. My background might be different, but it might resonate with some of you. What helped me make that transition was the type of work that I do now. Work very much with leaders, all sides of businesses, actually, in relation to the interconnection with getting clarity on strategy, clarity on culture, and clarity on them as leaders to shadow that. Really helped me in my development, actually, as a leader and running a small business. And then stepping in, and I wanted to talk about the work that I do now, just to kind of provoke thought and kind of in the context of your businesses as well. So this is a really deliberate use of crappy corporate photos. It's not there's a theme to it, but this was me wearing a tie, first of all kind of working in a big global utility company, and then a city-based consultancy, an outsourced company. In the 13 years I was at the consultancy, we grew the consultancy sixfold. We increased headcount sixfold. I had 3 executive roles. I was a board member, and I picked up a non-executive role as well. And kind of enjoyed it. I navigated through it. I did lots of speaking. It became a really big part of my identity, it kind of who I was, and that transpired not just in a work capacity, but in a life capacity as well. And how that kind of is relevant, I think, to the conversation you just had, is this photo here is kind of like, when I got this corporate photo, this was me knowing that I had to leave. Me knowing that although I was in this stable position, this secure position, I was well rewarded. For me, anyway, this face tells a thousand words. You know, I was burnt out, actually, and I needed a change. But I thought, mindset-wise, that actually, although I recognised I needed a change, it was so hard to make that transition, and it was doubly hard subsequently to make that decision to move to a small business in a new field. But I did that. I stepped out. I moved to a small company, completely different field, leadership development, culture transformation, followed a passion. I joined. I'm not as well, I don't consider myself as successful as you founding your own businesses. I joined a successful, established founder-led business, and what we were doing is we were opening up to become a partnership that, with the sum of 3 of us, we will be able to expand that business more than one individual was. So it's great recognition from the founder that actually, to supplement his networks with our networks, his experience with our experience, we could expand. And I thought, well, okay, how hard could it be, right? I've grown a consultancy. It was a much larger consultancy. I was an experienced leader. I could do this. I've got this. And as many of you know, working in a small business is really rewarding. Nothing's off the table. When I was in a corporate role, I couldn't just do what I wanted to do, or if I did want to do something, it would have taken a lot of time and a lot of consensus. And we can do anything we like now. We can make decisions and implement it the next day. We can implement it the next day, find out it's not working, and then change it. And it's a real privilege to be at the nucleus of what we want to create as a better company. The growth potential's there, knowing that the growth potential's all in you to do, and it's great actually to be really passionate about what you do and the impact you can make to your clients. Why I found it challenging is for exactly the same reasons as why I find it great. When nothing's off the table, you can make decisions, and you can get them wrong. You can do anything you like, which makes it limitless. So it makes it really difficult to focus on the things that you need to do. Being the nucleus of a better company means if you don't consider, especially when you've got high ambition, that you've done enough to make it a better company, you get frustrated. And great potential is only a great thing if you realize it. And I've never had the kind of the personal accountability in my 20-year career as I've got now, working in a smaller business, because I know that the success of the business is predicated on the work that I put in, and there's no way to hide it. There's no way to hide the hard work that you need to put in to be successful. And that is challenging, and that took a different mindset to me. And when you're passionate about something, you don't want to get stuff wrong. You don't want to do stuff that's not going to meet your client expectations or your colleagues' expectations, especially when they're high achievers. And that transition, and this kind of transitions into the work that we're doing now, took a real shift of mindset. My personal worldview, my basic assumptions about people, they were corporately conditioned. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it was a true thing. And therefore, I saw the world the way that I lived in a world for the last 20 years. And when I moved to a different business, it wasn't the same. The world wasn't the same. So therefore, my perception of it just differed. My experience was predicated on the way things have worked in the past, the patterns I saw. Therefore, I approached things in a way that I would have approached things before, just naturally, because my mindset was fixed to do it. But it didn't work in all instances. And even your kind of automatic responses, your subconscious bias, it's always kind of there at the front of your mind, and then leads to the behaviours and the results that you get. So I realised the work that we did, and actually this kind of personal journey that I went through, that perception was largely driven by this subconscious, highly influenced by the context of the last 20 years. And I didn't see the things the way they are, but the way that I saw them. So I did a lot of work, and I'm sure a number of you are familiar with this concept, but it's always worth bearing in mind, especially when you start to doubt yourself, or start to be so certain actually in relation to where you think where you make decisions. That I realized that, rightly or wrongly, my conditioning of the last 20 years, although successful, was limited in the fact that I didn't avoid challenges, but I didn't necessarily want to lean into them to the level that I needed to lean into them working in a small business. Obstacles I found difficult to overcome, I had to face. And the big thing for me was I don't like the phraseology of criticism, but kind of challenge to do things better, supportive challenge. It wasn't natural for me to make that transition, which I think is incredibly important to be successful in a smaller business. So there's this kind of mindset that you've done it, you've been successful, and therefore, you can't really get any better. And that intelligence and talent is kind of fixed. And I did a lot of work on growth mindset, and we do a lot of work on growth mindset with our clients as well. And that point on the bottom left about intelligence and talent going up and down, I kind of, in that transition I made to a new smaller business, my intelligence, my talent, and my ability to be really, really good and really competent at what I did kind of dropped. And and it was natural when it dropped, because you change your context, it means that you're not an expert in what you do anymore. But I've not encountered that. So the work around embracing challenges, persisting, that kind of ongoing path to self-mastery was something that personally got me through, and I've seen have a massive impact, just that realization and reflection of that, when it comes to leaders that we work with as well. And it's just worth kind of asking yourself a question, I suppose, on an ongoing basis, what your current or your persistent mindset is. In some situations, in some companies, whether corporate or not corporate, people really struggle with not looking good and showing vulnerability. People really struggle with not having something come naturally to you. And especially when you're a high achiever, and especially when you're ambitious, you know, you don't want to make mistakes. You kind of have this tendency to conceal deficiencies and defend your own point of view because you've done it before. And checking that against like this kind of learn at all costs attitude, this realization that you know, resilience is absolutely key, and it's okay not to be fantastic at everything. Really shifted a mindset to lead to you know, significant improvement in the impact I can have in a business. And I don't know whether this is going to work online. It may well do. But one of the realizations that I had when I started doing this work, we show this to our clients, and I see black and blue. Simple. No doubt about it. It's the black and blue dress. And my colleague said to me, she sees a white and gold dress. I don't know if anybody else sees white and gold. Please let me know if you do. Usually in a group, it's a combination. Ollie, do you see white and gold? Yeah. And this was this realization, right, that you could see exactly the same thing, exactly the same dress, but see something completely different. Sorry, Ollie. So it's kind of going through experiences like this, kind of unpicking the certainty I had, and actually realizing people can see exactly the same thing but see something completely different, was quite revelational. And it is a black and blue dress, so I was right, but you know, people genuinely see it in a different way. And kind of going on briefly to the work we do, stepping in, and we work with large businesses, but we work with small businesses as well, and I think it's relevant. The role that you have in being clear about your strategy and your direction and articulating that in an inspirational way really does form the backdrop of motivating your people to get behind that purpose as well. But if you can do that and you don't recognize that you need to set a measurable set of behaviors and ways of working with your team that then is relevant to that strategy, it's not going to be enough. And if you don't shadow the right behavioral characteristics that you need in the culture that you've defined to meet the strategy that you have set up, then it's not going to work. And a lot of companies, and when I had either strategy consultants or leadership consultants come into the businesses I used to work with, we got a beautiful strategy which we could articulate in a really inspiring way, but we didn't connect that with the culture and the leadership. And the work that we do now is fascinating and insightful for me, because we kind of work in the nexus between the three. And the principles the Coode Associates that I work with now are that organisationally, you'll only reach your half potential if you have all your policies and your systems and your reward and recognition in your office is in place, it's only going to get you halfway. It's really important, and you can't not do it relevant to your organization. But actually, it's that internal drivers of behavior, those beliefs, those habits, those mindsets, those relationships that are actually going to kind of make sure that the company reaches that full potential. So to continue to replenish that driver for behavior, recognize the power of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, work on energy levels, which you know, are super important. And that conversation earlier about putting yourself on top and making sure that exercise supplements part of your ability to be energetic is really important. You tend to have this kind of bucket of energy every day. You spend it on everybody else but yourself. It's really important to balance that out. And really, I mean, it's just contextually, it's useful to continue to recognise that it's a combination of the two. And whether a small or large business as well, leadership is responsibility. It's mindset rather than title and hierarchy. And we do a lot of work, which again has been insightful for me. I've not really kind of seen it in a way that it's described in relation to this, which I think I got to where I got to in my corporate world because I could drive performance and I could drive delivery. And I was really good at that. I got the numbers up, I got the growth up, I got a position on the executive team. But actually, the role of a leader in any business is to do more than that. Is to connect with the strategic context and be able to articulate it. It's to be able to articulate it in a way that people believe in it and people can articulate it themselves, whatever level of the organization they are. It's that ongoing focus on personal development and that kind of opening of your own mindset to know that you're on this kind of continual journey and that never ends. There's that responsibility. And the thing about culture is you can measure it. And I'll talk about that in a second, to build capability and shape culture. That's often forgotten, actually, in terms of leadership. You think that culture is this kind of thing that just happens, and if you shadow the right thing, it works. But it's something that we believe needs to be kind of a little bit more programmatic in its nature. And this is kind of, I mean, we the founder of Coode Associates founded Culture 15. It's a partner organisation of ours, and we've done this ourselves and we've done this for clients. But we think that culture is determined by these five kind of pillars: and people interactions, decision making, execution, energy orientation, and information flow. There's no right or wrong answer, because each of these kind of cultural definition targets are relevant to where you need to achieve your strategy. But what we can work out is kind of where you are relative to where you want to be. You can diagnose where you are, you can define where you want to be, and then you can start to think about how you close that gaps. Engagement surveys, a lot of organizations do that, and that's useful. It's sentiment, it says how you feel on a certain day. But actually, just determining and defining what's important for you to achieve your strategy and what the gaps are, all of a sudden make that kind of measurement of culture more tangible than perhaps I think organizations have looked at it before. So if you get the cultural articulation right, you get the cultural capabilities right, and underpinning behaviors start to become real, not conceptual. A lot of organizations have values. Values don't mean anything in terms of the way that you're working. And I just wanted to briefly show you what we did with ours. We used Culture 15, we determined where we were, and then we defined where we want to be, and then we defined what we needed to do as an organization to achieve what we wanted to achieve. Underpinning this is a little bit more detail that we put together, but it sets a way of working which is consistent in the organization, which we can track together on, which leaves no ambiguity, because we discuss it, about what a high challenge culture is. And this was a shock for me when I moved, this high challenge culture. And I thought, well, why are we challenging each other so much? But it's to drive outcome. And if you know that you're doing it to support someone and to better someone's progression as a leader, then actually it's okay to be challenged, and it's part of that growth mindset again. The last one really resonated. We are in it together. We are a small business. There's a few of us. There's no heroes. There's no egos. So, but we had to define it to live it. And often not defining it leads to ambiguity. And as you grow, any ambiguity in those foundations and in those behavioral expectations can lead to a culture disconnect. So last slide, culture should be at the heart of strategy. You can't have a strategy alone without the underpinning behaviours and ways of working. It always should start at the top. We have clients sometimes who say, our next level down is the problem. It's not us, we're great. It has to start at the top. Make it personal, show vulnerability, make sure that there's some behavioural change that you go through yourself, because it's important. You can make it practical, you can align it to the processes, and you can measure it. Miserable me, happier me, greyer me, but you know, it's been a journey, and I hope that some elements have resonated. I haven't got feedback right, so I'll stop sharing that. Maybe we can have a bit more interaction.
John, that was fantastic. The journey the transition you made there from C-suite to SME, I'm not sure I can do the opposite journey from SME to C-suite, if I'm honest. That would be interesting. Any questions for John at all this morning? Tim.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to get my question in quick because I've got to shoot off at 10. John, a very interesting and well-articulated story. Some time ago, I suppose I did something similar. I'll ask you this question. I can remember whilst I was deciding to leave corporate life and start a business. In actual fact, the thing that I spent the most time considering was how I'd manage the risk in terms of, because I mean, I went from, like you had a corporate income to no income at all. You had a business with no customers. I spent a long time trying to understand the risk and how I think about that in terms of my head. And then, I came to a logical conclusion. And then I remember when we started it was 6 or 7 weeks. And we started this time of year, and it was mid-October before we got our first customer. And I can remember a day or two before that first customer came, I broke out in a cold sweat, because I thought, if we don't get something soon, we won't get anything this side of Christmas. And I had 2 very young children at the time. I didn't fancy going to Christmas because we had no other income without this having some sort of measurable success. Did you have any of those cold sweat moments? How did you rationalise the risk of leaping from a safe corporate life into a smaller, much smaller business?
I didn't take the same risk. I can never claim to take the same risk as you've taken, and probably many of you have taken. You know, I took a salary, took a good salary. It was an established business, a really well-established business. The risk for me, to some degree, was the risk of stepping out. That was the thing that I found the hardest, and actually the risk of backing myself to be able to be successful. And the first few months, having little competence and little confidence of what I was doing, was really, really difficult, having left such a safe and stable environment. And I think, and this is why I kind of focused on my mindset such a lot, because I wouldn't have been able to do it, if it wasn't for backing myself. I think now, if I've got the confidence and the mindset to keep growing the business and keep growing myself, hopefully the clients will still come. But the level of accountability to bring in those clients, to network and take those clients over the line is significantly more than I had before. I had a team behind me who could support me to do it. So I just found a way to do it for me was to gain more confidence to back myself and just really focus on my energy levels. But it was hard, Tim, really hard, a lot harder than I thought, actually. But it was quite a well-established business, so I was pretty lucky.
Well done.
Thanks, Tim. Tom.
John, that was very, very interesting and useful. It's interesting because you and I are almost like two halves of the same coin. I'm very interested in behaviour and culture, but from the external point of view.
Yeah.
The strange thing is, in my world, I often see people whose brands are projecting the aspiration of what they think they should be in terms of their culture, in terms of their behaviours. And as you showed on your slide, often that internal external piece is a complete, there's actually no sort of join in reality. So often I sort of end up getting dragged almost slightly towards your world in what I do, because people start, when we start talking about what their external brand should actually be, then they start realizing what might actually have to change internally. But so if I flip the question around to you, when you do the work that you do with people and you get their internal culture and their internal behaviors better, do you see that? How well do you think your clients then actually externally represent the new reality that you have opened up for them? Does it happen, or do you get frustrated that it doesn't happen as much as it should?
Most of the time, luckily, it does. And so it's a journey. We tend to work with clients over the course of time, and we tend to frame everything we do with a combination of focusing on the very practical and the external drivers, and then the focus on the experiential learning around behavioural drivers. And what's so unique, actually, and what works for me and why I actually got the role was it's very practitioner-led. We are people who have worked in business, therefore we can speak a business language, but we are people who are passionate about behavioural change, therefore we will push you, understanding your context, to do the same. Some of our clients are significantly moved forward, both from a personal team alignment perspective and organisational perspective. Where we do our best work, I think, is where we work with, say, a leadership team, we translate that down, and then we look across, and we've got this unique look across, because you can align a team, but then if you can align those teams across an organisation, it's great. Sometimes it's harder than others, but I think the people that we have, the frameworks that we've got, I think bring the best out of leaders and challenge leaders. When we look at our kind of identity out externally and what we are, Charlie, the founder, often says we kind of find a button and we press on it, and it's uncomfortable. But actually, you know what? You need to be uncomfortable to actually change. Some companies need more help with their articulation, and they've got the behaviours. Some need more help with their behaviours, and they've got beautiful articulation. So it's balancing where.
Yeah, it's that representation piece that I'm particularly interested in, as to once they see the light, I think, oh yeah, this is what we should be doing. Is people can do it internally, but they either run into barriers of marketing people going, well, yeah, but that's not. Fine. If you want to be like that internally, that's we are. But I still want the representation to be X. So they sort of resist it, or the clients just don't know. Well, what is the representation of all of this new thinking and new ways of being? So yeah, that's the bit I was particularly interested in.
Yeah, and I think it comes more naturally when you've done your work to improve your internal behaviours. It becomes more natural. It becomes less staged, I think. So I think it's that element that then leads to a representation which is more akin to what the behaviours are in the organisation. Still need help in that way, though, for sure.
Great stuff.
Thanks, Tom. Good point. Perhaps you should hook up with John and have a chat.
Yeah, there's probably more to discuss.
Have a lot in common there. John, I can't thank you enough. I repeat what others have said. It was a very important subject that's been articulated extremely well, and we're very thankful to you for that. We are today going to show you a lot of love on various media platforms.
Thank you.
I'm going to give you some big ups and some, respect for what you've done. We really, really enjoyed that.